Hi, I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, President Trump is butting heads with Twitter after the tech company added fact-check links to his tweets for the first time. Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace joins host Lisa Brady to weigh in on the debate over alleged social media censorship and what implications it could have on the 2020 presidential race. While the nation remains under phased social distancing orders to prevent the spread of COVID-19, some religious leaders are making a First Amendment case to reopen places of worship. Charles Clark III, co-pastor of Solid Rock Baptist Church, joins host Dave Anthony to discuss his lawsuit with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. Plus commentary by former Deputy National Security Advisor Katie McFarland. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Earl Rivera.
I'm Emily Campagno.
And I'm Eric Shawn. This is a Fox News Rundown.
Friday, May 29th, 2020. I'm Lisa Brady. Fact-checking the president. Twitter makes a move and he fires back. But is this a slippery slope for social media?
I'd be perfectly happy if everything politicians said is fact-checked and everything I say is fact-checked. That's fine, but you can't do it. You just can't. And there's always going to be some bias.
I'm Dave Anthony. It's happening across America. Religious leaders defying governors, opening up their churches, even going to court.
We don't want this. We didn't look for a fight. And what we want to do is be put in the category of essential. It is essential to our people for them to have their right. We have people discouraged. We have people depressed. We have people that just want to show their love for God by attending church.
And I'm Katie McFarland. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
President Trump is taking aim at big tech with his pen instead of his phone.
My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield.
The act was passed by Congress in 1996, and the president says there may be bipartisan support for changes. He's also asking his administration to make sure no taxpayer dollars go to social media companies that repress free speech. The president and others have long argued there's an anti-conservative bias online and in the media, but the tipping point was Twitter's decision to add a fact-check label to presidential tweets about mail-in voting fraud, a first even after years of controversial tweets. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg tells Fox's Dana Perino he still opposes fact-checking political speech and that his platform is more about freedom of expression.
I just believe strongly that Facebook shouldn't be the arbiter of truth of everything that people say online.
That drew skepticism from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who accuses Zuckerberg of pandering to the White House, hoping to avoid regulation.
The danger in that is once you go down that slope, unless you're going to fact check everything everybody says, and Lord knows, are there things the president says that aren't true? Yes. Are there things that Joe Biden says and Democrats say that aren't true? Yes.
Chris Wallace is the host of Fox News Sunday.
So if you're going to fact check the president, are you going to fact check Joe Biden? If you're going to fact check, some Republican congressman, are you going to fact check a Democratic congressman? And so it becomes a very dangerous thing because if you're not even-handed and you don't fact-check everybody, then people are going to see bias. Well, they're fact-checking one side, not the other. I remember when I got to moderate a presidential debate in 2016 between Trump and Clinton, Howie Kurtz asked me, are you going to truth squad? Are you going to fact-check what both of the people said? And I said, I'm not. And there was a big blow-up. Why aren't you going to do that? And the reason I gave is kind of the reasoning I'm giving here. If you were going to fact check one thing that candidate Trump said, then aren't you obligated to fact check one thing that Hillary Clinton said? And then you're down a slippery slope, and instead of it being a debate between the two candidates and let people figure it out for themselves, now you're a third party in the ring. I kind of think Twitter may have gotten into the middle of it and may regret it.
And the Twitter CEO is saying basically, look, we're not trying to be the arbiter of truth. We're just trying to point people in the right direction for more information. But the White House is saying the president's being singled out, and that, for instance, Twitter was not fact-checking Chinese propaganda, blaming the U.S. military for coronavirus, as an example, until the White House pointed it out. This also goes along, too, with claims from the president and others for a long time now that conservative voices in general are singled out and silenced on social media. I mean, does it just feed into that?
Well, it certainly feeds into it. I don't know enough to know the facts as to whether or not it's true. But it certainly does feed into the idea that they have a thumb on the scale. Twitter has got special protections that publishers don't have. The New York Times doesn't have, that Fox News doesn't have. And they say that they're a platform. They're not a publisher. So therefore, they say they're not responsible. And under the law, Section 230, I just found out about it, under some 1996 law, they can't be held responsible if somebody says something libelous on their website. They're basically saying, we're just carrying this. We're not saying who's right or who's wrong. We're not standing behind it. Look, I would love everything to be fact-checked. I'm in the truth business, and I'd be perfectly happy if everything politicians said is fact-checked and everything I say is fact-checked. That's fine, but you can't do it. You just can't. And there's always going to be some bias in what you decide is so false it needs to be fact-checked. And that just lends itself to the argument that there's political bias, political favoritism in what you call out and what you don't.
This issue of mail-in voting, which is what prompted the fact-check, could it be a dangerous one for the president? If people don't feel safe going to the polls, are they going to resent him or anyone else that appears to stand in the way of a safer option?
Well, all I know on this, and this was, as you say quite rightly, what got us into the Twitter controversy, is, I've done a certain amount of research on it, and there doesn't seem to be an indication of widespread or really almost any fraud associated with mail-in voting. It goes on in Republican states. It goes on in Democratic states. Utah, couldn't be more conservative state, has all mail-in voting in its elections, and it doesn't seem to favor one party over another. In fact, one of the groups, beyond the question of trying to do this in the middle of a pandemic, although we hope it'll be better by November, is that one of the groups that uses mail-in voting for health reasons, physical disability reasons, the most is seniors, people over 65, and they tend to vote Republican. So to the degree that you make it harder to mail-in vote, the Republicans may be hurting one of their own constituencies, not to mention, as you say, if we were to have a second wave or there's a sufficient concern still about the coronavirus in October, November, early voting, and then actual election day, and people feel, well, gee, I had to vote because the president stopped it, there might be some backlash. So there's one other fact here. Here you have Kayleigh McEnany speaking out, defending the president, attacking mail-in voting, and somebody found out, she's a resident of Florida, that she has mail-in voted something like 10 or 12 times in the last decade. So, again, it raises the question, well, if it's okay for her, why isn't it okay for everybody else?
Right, and I think she's echoing the president's argument that, yes, absentee voting is fine when needed, but that they're concerned a mass mailing of ballots out to everyone increases the risk of fraud somehow. Joe Biden, in the meantime, finally got out of his basement as both he and the president marched Memorial Day. Even that ended up having political overtones, though, because Biden wore a mask and the president did not.
Yeah, I had actually said, I think, on this rundown that I thought that Biden needed to get out of the basement last week. There just didn't seem to be any excuse. People are getting out, obviously, under very controlled conditions, and the Biden needed to get out. He couldn't be you can't run for president and be a prisoner for 2.5 months in your basement. Now, I have kind of mixed feelings about the controversy over what happened on Memorial Day. On the one hand, I don't understand why Biden, at some point, when it was just him and Jill Biden, his wife, and they obviously have been together for 2.5 months, in the basement, why couldn't have, as he was taking the wreath to the memorial in Delaware, why couldn't have taken off his mask? It struck me as looking a little silly. Having said that, I understand when you're around people, and I hate that masks have now become a political issue. And, now whether you wear a mask or don't says something about whether you're a liberal or a conservative, a Republican or a Democrat, tough or weak. All of the science indicates if you're close to people, you should wear a mask. If you're within 6 feet, you should wear a mask, not to protect yourself, but to protect other people. And the idea that that's going to become part of the political debate, I think, is really dangerous, particularly at a time when we're trying to reopen the country. We ought to be doing it as safely as possible. And, I was horrified, as I think anybody has to be, when I saw all of those people partying in Lake of the Ozarks or at some of the beaches over Memorial Day weekend. That's the kind of thing that's going to cause a second spike. So if you believe in reopening and you believe in trying to kill the virus and damp it down, then wear a mask and socially distance. Everybody says so.
Both Biden and the president have also come out fairly quickly and condemned the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the unarmed black forgery suspect who died in police custody. Politicians, though, always have to be careful what they say and how they say it, right? Especially when the nation is already hurting so much right now. 40 million out of work because of the pandemic, now over 100,000 dead. It's just a difficult time all around and a very tense time.
Yes, but when people are outraged, as I think they should be, by seeing a man who was look, I wouldn't be a policeman. There used to be an ad, and it showed an empty alley, a dark alley, and it said, you wouldn't go down that alley for all the money in the world. A policeman go down for a lot less. And it's true. Policemen are put in really tough situations, which is why, for instance, in Ferguson, with a very big guy, Michael Brown, who was allegedly charging at a police officer. I'm not going to sit there and second guess what's an appropriate use of force. But when you see the video and you see this man and he was handcuffed, and he was handcuffed behind his back, and for minute after minute, I think 4 to 5 minutes, he's begging, please, I can't breathe, please let me up. And the guy has his knee, and it seems his full weight pressed on his neck. That was, that's outrageous. And I think that politicians, without saying whether they need to go to jail or what the punishment should be, need to say to a community, we've had a few, and we're going to talk about it on Fox News Sunday, we've had a few racial incidents in the last few weeks, whether it was the Arbery case or the guy out for a jog in Georgia who got shot, whether it was that awful case, thankfully didn't end up worse, with the woman with the dog and in Central Park calling the police and saying she was being attacked by an African American when she wasn't. Now this case, which is, maybe the worst of all. Leaders need to speak out about that and not to fan the flames, and Lord knows we don't want riots, but to say we understand and we're going to try to fix this, and this is unacceptable behavior in this country in the year 2020.
Chris Wallace, host of Fox News Sunday. Looking forward to it, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Lisa.
This is KT McFarland with your Fox News commentary. Coming up.
It's church versus states. A battle that started with the coronavirus shutdowns in March, heating up as we end May.
In America, we need more prayer, not less.
President Trump has ordered they all be allowed to open.
The people are demanding to go to church and synagogue, go to their mosque. Many millions of Americans embrace worship as an essential part of life.
But critics question his authority over governors on this, and he replied the other day,
if they want to play games, that's okay, but we will win. And we have many different ways where I can override them.
Some churches are defying orders.
So I'm tearing up this cease and desist order right here, and I'm telling you right now, we're going to do it God's way.
Stacy Shiflett had been told he can't have more than 10 people in his Calvary Baptist Church in Baltimore County, Maryland. He told Fox,
If we do not defend and take up for and insist on our God-given inalienable rights and our constitutional freedoms, then nobody else will.
A similar story is playing out in New Jersey. Democratic Governor Phil Murphy is still not allowing public gatherings of 10 or more people, citing safety concerns. His state has the second most corona cases in the U.S., but some churches are opening and holding services anyway.
Well, so much about church is the importance of gathering together as a church family.
Charles Clark III is co-pastor of Solid Rock Baptist Church in Berlin, New Jersey, and he's ready to take the governor to court.
And so for us as preachers, learning how to primarily preach to a camera and have services in front of a camera, it was okay. It's been good. I'm glad we live in this age where there's a technology. But church family gathering is just so very important because of the human aspect. And the isolation that's going on with the people has been very difficult for them and difficult for us. People want to meet, people want to assemble. And so we learned how to deal with it, but it's definitely not the same as having church in the building.
And I know that a lot of the anger that's been brewing over this issue is that you, as a church, are essentially deemed non-essential. And that has bothered a lot of people. I'm sure that bothers you.
Yeah, we can't have churches discriminated against. And the heart of the matter is this. Churches have religious liberty rights. Under the First Amendment, we are listed first in line. And our governor, Governor Murphy, has taken us out of the line. There's been almost no communication to the church. And they've said the big box stores, and I'm not against those, we go to them as we need to. But to say that those are essential, the liquor store is essential, but the church is supposed to stay shuttered, there is no part of that that is constitutional. And so we are an organization as a local church that's all about loving people, taking care of people. If it's not too dangerous to go into Walmart, then it's not too dangerous to go into the church. Church can do things right. I'm not flattering ourselves. We can do it better than the box stores. And I'm not against them having freedom, but you cannot say religious liberty just gets pushed aside. Attorney General Barr has made clear that the Constitution doesn't go out the window during the time of a pandemic.
There have been legal challenges across America, and 2 cases have reached the Supreme Court as emergency appeals that might be considered. One out of Illinois, the other out of California.
Religion cannot be singled out. And we are still being singled out with restrictions no one else faces.
Bishop Arthur Hodges from the South Bay United Pentecostal Church. The state only lets him open to 25% capacity, capped at no more than 100 worshipers. And he told Fox's Martha McCallum,
factories continue to operate with no restrictions on how many people are in the factories, hundreds of people in the factories, spaced just a few feet apart. Airplanes continue to fly with zero state or federal regulations.
And Pastor Clark feels the same way, which is why he went ahead and held services for the first time last Sunday.
Yes, sir, we did. It was wonderful.
And how many people showed up?
Okay, so we made a decision that with social distancing in our auditorium, which holds roughly 1,000 people, that we would put around 250 in the building. And so we did not press any of our members, you have to come. Absolutely not. We're continuing our online, and we've told our seniors especially, listen, hey, there is no pressure on you to come here. I didn't forbid people that are seniors to come. I mean, how do you say that to an American citizen? You're not allowed to a church? I can't deny them of that. This Sunday, we're actually going to start a special seniors-only service for those who want to come to that early morning on Sunday. But basically, our people did reservations to come, and we socially distanced them in our auditorium. There are spacers on each pew. We're going every other pew. Our parking is social distance, meaning we're going every other spot. People come in, they wear a mask. Anybody coming in the building has to wear a mask. They have their temperature taken at the door, touchless temperature. Anybody 100.4 or more would not be allowed in the building. All the doors are open, so it's a touchless entry. Our psalm books have been taken out of the pews. We do not have a choir. We have HEPA air filters, air scrubbing, turning over the area in the air in our auditorium. Our bathrooms are closed except for near emergencies. And it's one stall, meaning one family unit or person goes in at a time. And when they come out, we then sanitize the bathroom after those either individuals or families have gone into the bathrooms. I really don't know what else we could do besides put on hazmat suits to be safer in our church.
Now, the governor still isn't allowing churches to open up yet in New Jersey. Did you have anybody stop by? Did you have any police presence? Did you have any issues with you defying orders last Sunday? And what about this coming Sunday?
So we knew he is not looking at giving church favor and putting us in the category of essential. So we've been pressed to just set our date, which was the 24th last Sunday, and say, listen, we're going to open our doors. So we received our citation from our town here. And it's literally where it says the offense is opening the church, opening Solid Rock for a group of 10 or more people. My dad, who's 74 years old, senior pastor, I think this is just tragic, received a citation, the state of New Jersey versus him. And he's put over 40 years in ministering for the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ here in our state. So this will trigger the start of our lawsuit against Governor Murphy. We don't want this. We didn't look for a fight. And what we want to do is be put in the category of essential. It is essential to our people for them to have their right. We have people discouraged. We have people depressed. We have people that just want to show their love for God by attending church, and that's the right. So the police are very conflicted. I'll be very direct with you. Ones we've talked to, because it's their job, but many side with us. And we're not trying to put pressure on them, like join our cause. I don't want policemen to lose their job based on a governor's overreach. We believe we're going to win in court. So we've had a good relationship with our local police here, and the county police work together to provide safety for our church family on Sunday. We didn't know whether to be protesters or even supporters, what could happen. There's been concerns because of other situations in the country. So the law enforcement here in South Jersey with us has been wonderful. It's the governor's office that's, giving us grief.
Have you filed the lawsuit yet?
We are beginning that process this week. We had to wait for our citation. We knew we would get it. And so he's well aware that we're here. Nobody's called me from the governor's office. They know at this point, since they're coming on so strong, he gives no indication other than, well, the numbers don't say. So here's reality, both now and moving forward. The church has its First Amendment rights. We cannot wait for the governor to give thumbs up, thumbs down bluntly at his whims or not. He's not said what goes into factoring essential or not. So how does he just disregard the church and say liquor stores, marijuana dispensaries, they're open the whole time, no matter what the numbers were? But God-fearing people in the United States of New Jersey, United States of America and New Jersey Constitution having constitutional rights have been thrown out the door.
Did the citation come with a fine?
It doesn't say. And honestly, the governor's been asked about this. The reason why he can't speak definitively, in my opinion, as to what's going to happen to us is because it's an executive order. This is not normal law. Yes, he has 10th Amendment, and yes, there's an extended time where because of the pandemic, he can make choices, but these are not just supposed to go on forever. And so the whole fine system, or, he keeps, repercussions is his response to what's going to happen. But it's going to get tricky based on how things go in court, and then our response to how things go in court.
But you'll be open for services again Sunday, right?
We have our Sunday services, and we will be continuing our services. It is our First Amendment right, is our New Jersey right, and is our Bible mandate. We are a Christian church, and because people have decided to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, part of that is that we assemble as a church family, and they want to come. No one is making anyone come to our church. There's no guarantee of safety anytime any of us leave our front door. And sometimes we wonder if, but the numbers, people have sense, people can see we are going above CDC measures here at Solid Rock Baptist Church, and yet the governor still does not look at what we're doing and acknowledge it. He talks about sedentary and the idea of sitting. People working in the box stores, they're in those places all day. And meaning, there's not just the in and out the doors. What about the workers? What about the employees? And how can he look at what we're doing and find fault with it? I don't know. But I know this, when he says really no time frame, no timetable, we're not willing to do that. Because whatever the virus does in the future, what if he locks down again on us and just says, okay, no church? That would be a loss of religious liberty. I'm not saying that the initial intent of flattening the curve was to take away religious liberty. But losing religious liberty cannot become a byproduct of the coronavirus situation.
What happens if some of your parishioners get sick and somebody spread it in church?
That's a really difficult question. Number one, we're praying that it won't happen. Number two, we're trying to do everything we can to not let it happen. But it is a reality that it could, okay? So how we would deal with that in the context of medically, obviously, I'll go on record and say this. We will deal with that if it ever does come as safely as we can. But I guess what I'm saying is this. When the founding fathers put the Bill of Rights together and throughout American history, there's been all types of pandemics. There's been all types of problems, including health issues, if you think over the course of our American history. But the church has continued. The church has continued. And I will be on record and say, we're not closing the doors again. We may have to go through some difficult times, but this idea that just automatically church is the only place that you have to be worried about getting the coronavirus, I don't agree with that.
Well, we wish you well, and thank you so much for joining us. Charles Clark III, co-pastor, Solid Rock Baptist Church in Berlin, New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
It's the Perino and Steyerwalt I'll Tell You What podcast. Dana Perino of The Five and Fox News political editor Chris Steyerwalt dissect the ins and outs of national politics. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. Rate and review the Fox News Rundown on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen.
And now, some good news with Tonya J. Powers.
COVID-19 has removed the expected, the normal, the things we once thought of as ordinary. Gatherings like friendly get-togethers, birthday parties, and graduations have taken on a whole new look with social distancing guidelines and mask wearing. But some people have resorted to creative ways to put a safe spin on events, even street parties. A good example of that happened in Las Vegas, where a parking lot was transformed into a drive-by carnival. Think Halloween trunk-or-treating, but without the costumes and more social distancing. More than 50 cars drove through the event, which means kids could participate in dunk tanks and other carnival games from the safety of their cars. They got gift bags, balloons, and cotton candy, too. It was hosted by the Friendship Circle, a nonprofit that helps put on programming for those with special needs. Rabbi Levi Harley is the director.
I want to give the special needs community a chance to get out of the house. Everyone's having a hard time, but it could be these people are having it even worse.
Event organizers made sure to wear gloves and masks during the carnival. Tonya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary. KT McFarland. What's on your mind?
A picture starting to emerge about the abuse of power against the incoming Trump administration, orchestrated by a cabal of outgoing Obama administration officials, House Democrats, the intelligence community, and their allies in the media. Turns out the entire Russia investigation was a sham, and Obama administration officials knew it from the get-go. Senior intelligence officials testified before closed-door congressional hearings that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Yet Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, CIA Director John Brennan, FBI Director James Comey, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff went on cable news shows day after day, implying or saying outright to the American people that they had proof of collusion and that Donald Trump would never have been elected without Russian interference. Well, even now, with a steady accumulation of evidence and more to follow, don't expect any of these people to come clean or to admit their mistakes. Instead, they're doubling down and coming up with new excuses to justify their actions. One you're likely to hear more of in the days ahead comes from that fateful few days in late December 2016 when President Obama imposed sanctions on the Russians for election interference. The administration expected the Russians to retaliate on the eve of Trump's inauguration, leaving the new president a U.S.-Russia crisis to greet his arrival at the White House. When the Russians didn't retaliate, Obama directed the intelligence community to find out why, with the presumption that Trump must have cut a deal with Putin during the final days of the transition. At that time, the president-elect was at Mar-a-Lago. I was there also in my role as the senior national security advisor. This is what the FBI and Mueller prosecutors grilled me about for more than 30 hours and several interrogation sessions into the summer, fall, and winter of 2017 and 18. They were convinced there was a smoking gun somewhere and that I was the middleman. They presumed that President-elect Trump directed me to tell Flynn to make promises to the Russians in exchange for not retaliating. I insisted over and over again that it wasn't the case, that Trump gave me no such order, yet they persisted. What they never figured out, or never wanted to figure out, was that Putin probably played us all along. Putin didn't retaliate against Obama's sanctions because it wasn't in his best interest to do so. He had far more to lose in perpetuating the bad relationship he had with the Obama administration into the new Trump administration. Either the senior officials of the Obama administration, including Obama himself, were incompetent in analyzing Putin or deliberately used it as their excuse for investigating and wiretapping Flynn and others. The Russia hoax was all designed to prevent President Trump from doing what the American people elected him to do, drain the swamp. Why did the cabal want to stop Trump? Because they are the swamp. The American people have paid a very high price for the Russia hoax. Even if the investigation of the investigators uncovers the rot in the intelligence community, the ramifications of their actions will live on. By setting Americans at each other's throats for 3 years, our adversaries, especially the Chinese, were able to exploit our divisions to their advantage. That is the real crime against the American people. The cabal distracted us from the growing strategic threat so they could play nasty games against their political opponents. I'm KT McFarland, and I was President Trump's first Deputy National Security Advisor. I'm the author of the best-selling book, Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust, and click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.